Welcome to the Busy Signal. My name is Jim, and this is my retrostalgic 80s, 90s, and early 2000s podcast. This show aims to salute all the stuff from back in the day that is either now extinct or quickly going that way. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, I was taught a lot of things. These were my formative years. I was taught, of course, by my parents and teachers at school, sure, but every day I was taught nutrition, morals, and basic hygiene by the television in the form of public service announcements. If you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These things were snuck into everything. They were full-on commercials. They were snuck into our television shows. They were everywhere. There was a public service announcement for everything. Most of the time so far, if you've gathered in this podcast, I research the origins or history behind a subject. Not this time. This time, I'm just reaching into the dark, dusty corners of my brain, and trust me, there are many. And I'm pulling out all of my favorite public service announcements, PSAs. Either these are my favorite because I look back on them fondly, or they were my favorite to completely just trash and make fun of. To this day, I'm still quoting old goofy PSAs from the 80s and 90s. So let's see how many of these old PSAs you remember. I'm going to start with a very, very obvious one. Smokey the Bear. Only you can prevent forest fires. As a child in the 80s and a kid in the 90s, I really didn't watch the news. And I lived in a pretty densely populated state on the East Coast. I didn't realize that forest fires happened as often as they do and the devastation that they cause. Obviously, I knew the basics. You don't play with matches, you don't play with the stove. Now, as an adult who does read and watch the news, I see how often forest fires start, and I see how awful they are to the communities around them, and that they're still being started sometimes by people being careless with fire, whether it be matches, campfires, or cigarettes.
He protects all living things in the forest, but he can't do it alone. Please don't play with matches. And never, ever forget the words of Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent forest fires.
So this PSA has aged incredibly well because it is still just as relevant today as it was back then. And if we're going to talk about public service announcements that have iconic mascots, obviously the next place to go is McGruff the crime dog. McGruff first appeared in 1980. What we're looking at basically is a bloodhound in a trench coat that's giving off serious Robert Stack vibes. And when he was being developed, apparently, there was a nationwide contest in July of 1980 to name him. I wasn't quite born just yet, so I didn't get a vote. McGruff was all about crime prevention and awareness. These public service announcements covered things like home robbery prevention, like locking doors, turning on your lights, keeping them on timers, telling your neighbors when you're going to be gone for an extended period of time so they could watch your house. It also covered kidnapping and strangers, drugs, guns, and probably some that I don't even know about.
That's Jenny. But that's not Jenny's dad. If she gets into that car, you may be looking at Jenny for the last time. I'm McGruff, the crime dog. Let me show you something. See that playground? A lot of kids there. Every day in this country, 60 kids disappear. Some run away, but a lot are kidnapped by strangers or even by people they know. Almost 20,000 kids a year. 20,000 kids, one kid at a time. Maybe your kid, on your street, just like Jenny. Your kids can learn to protect themselves against crime at home, at school, on the street. Hey, nice going, Jenny. She's going to tell her folks about this. And you can write to McGruff. Learn how to keep your family and your community safe and help take a bite out of crime.
A lot of these PSAs that we're going through are just Saturday morning public service announcements, just hammering kids with messages. Saturday morning in the 80s meant one thing for kids, cartoons. And if you were watching NBC, you also got to see a series of public service announcements featuring celebrities. One to Grow On. It had a really memorable theme song with like this weird animation, introduction. They came on after the credits at the end of your favorite show or cartoon, and they averaged about 1 to 1.5 minutes long. They focused mainly on moral/ethical and personal safety situations. A celebrity would intro a quick situation, then we'd see this kind of dilemma unfold between a couple kids, and then it would cut back to the celebrity who would then provide commentary on how the dilemma should be solved. And then we would cut back to the situation and it would play out properly. It would give you an example of how you should act in these situations. And oh, by the way, the list of celebrities that has hosted One to Grow On is long and impressive. Just a few of my favorite One to Grow On hosts: Michael J. Fox, David Hasselhoff, don't hassle the Hoff, Mr. T, and Betty White.
Hi, I'm Nancy Reagan, and I'll be right back with One to Grow On.
Have I ever got a way to liven up this party? Either one of you heard of the 1-2 punch? No, what's that? Well, first you take a swig of this, and then you add this. Try it, Chris.
Sure.
Your turn, Danny.
No thanks. It's not my thing.
Oh, come on, get with it. It'll make the party more fun. Right, Chris?
Sure, right.
Think about that. Just because your friend tries to pressure you into doing something you know isn't right doesn't mean that you have to do it. Taking drugs and drinking aren't things you should do just because some people say you should. Don't make someone else's problem your problem. If you just say no to drugs and alcohol, you'll be saying yes to a whole lot more.
Forget it, Jesse. I don't need this stuff to make me have a good time. I'll see you around.
Johnny's right. I don't even like it.
And that's One to Grow On.
Public service announcements were so rampant, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, that they were even worked into our favorite shows and cartoons. It was completely normal to be watching Transformers, where Optimus Prime is forcing Megatron and the Decepticons to retreat, and then all of a sudden, you're watching Bumblebee tell a couple of kids about the consequences of running away from home.
I'm running away from home. My parents are mean. Where'll you go? I'm not sure, but I'll show them.
That's right. You'll show them how mean you can be.
Bumblebee!
Isn't it better to try to solve problems instead of running away from them?
Maybe I could try talking to my parents again.
Yeah, tell them how you feel. And remember, running away
Leads nowhere. Now I know.
and knowing is half the battle.
The Transformers!
I remember this happening in several shows, G.I. Joe, Transformers, and a lot of other shows. All of a sudden, that last 30 seconds of what should have been more show was your favorite cartoon characters telling you not to do drugs. Which, they were right, don't do drugs, kids. But let's not forget that kids were not the only ones targeted by public service announcements. Parents had nightly public service announcements, sometimes delivered by celebrities, sometimes delivered by local news anchors, but they were nightly.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
Teenagers were also specifically targeted. ABC's after-school specials were essentially like hour to hour and a half long public service announcement movies. If you've never seen an after-school special, go on YouTube, find one. The cheese is overwhelming. It's incredible. The war on drugs gave us some incredibly memorable public service announcements, and I still quote them and reference them almost on a daily basis. I say things like, "I'm not a chicken, you're a turkey," or "I learned it by watching you, all right." Yeah, if you lived in that time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. 1987 gave us one of the most iconic public service announcements ever, and it compared a drug user's brain to a fried egg.
Is there anyone out there who still isn't clear about what doing drugs does? Okay, last time. This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
10 years later, the Partnership for a Drug-Free America revived the eggs in the pan with an edgier take, featuring Rachel Lee Cook, before she starred in She's All That. She didn't just fry up some eggs. She was mad. She smashed the eggs while stating, "This is your brain on heroin."
This is your brain. And this is heroin. This is what happens to your brain after snorting heroin. And this is what your body goes through. Wait, it's not over yet. This is what your family goes through. And your friends and your money. And your job. And your self-respect and your future. And your life. Any questions?
But let's lighten it up a little bit. Let's go back to Saturday mornings. Anti-drug PSAs were definitely huge in the 80s and 90s, but there was also a plethora of other topics that PSAs covered. The American Broadcasting Company, ABC, they were the kings of the animated song and dance PSA. Specifically, I remember one that told you not to be lazy and do well in school, get a job. I am not going to play that one because I do not want that song in my head. YouTube is a thing. You're more than welcome to go find it yourself. There is one from 1987 that essentially, man, this one was weird. It was a cartoon character that was undeniably modeled after Arthur Fonzarelli, the Fonzie. He has a trio of greasers with him. They all have their leather jackets with their greased up pompadour hair, white t-shirts, and jeans with the rolled up cuffs with the black shoes. He goes on to sing and tell you about how you need to exercise your teeth. He goes by the name of Chopper, and well, I mean, you got to listen to this one for yourself.
They're doing push-ups in Peoria. They're jogging in L.A. They're exercising everything in lots of crazy ways. What, take it from the chopper? Hey, the chopper, yeah, that's me. If you want to have great choppers, exercise your teeth. Exercise those choppers, really chew, chew, chew. Exercise those choppers on some good hard food. Your molars grind, your canines tear, incisors bite right through. So exercise those choppers on some good hard food. Pumpernickel, carrot sticks, crunchy fruits and nuts. Things you really have to chew will make your choppers tough. So take it from the chopper, 'cause choppers know it's true. Exercise is great, but exercise your choppers too. Hey, Chopper, how about running a few laps with us? Hey, later, man. I'm eating a celery stick. This is hard exercise.
This one was weird. I get the message, but it was weird. Oh, here's one. In 1985, ABC implored us not to drown our food. Check it out.
I'm Louis, the lifeguard, and happy to say I rescued a drowning potato today. They drowned it in sour cream. Oh, what a shame, 'cause food's so much better when it's practically plain. So don't drown your food in mayo, salt, ketchup, or goop. Yuck! It's no fun to eat, but you can't even see. So don't drown your food.
So I understand as an adult that an excess of condiments and dressings is not good based on all the sugar and fat that you're also eating along with that. But as a kid, I didn't really put all that together because the PSA doesn't really spell it out for me. It just says don't drown your food. Food tastes better plain, but it doesn't tell you why. So it almost makes you want to put more ketchup on everything. I don't know. Maybe. Thanks, ABC. There's so many PSAs to go through. I could go on forever, and you're going to listen to this and say, you forgot this one. You didn't mention OG Reed more. No, I don't have time to get to all of them. And I'll get into that in a minute. Just, I want to give you this one last public service announcement, and I absolutely hated them. It was a series of them, but this one character was just irked me. There was another one on ABC, and it featured this odd mustard-colored, I don't even know. I have no idea what this character was even supposed to be. He was kind of round and ruddy and lumpy with stickish arms and legs. I don't think he even had clothes, but he had buttons on his stomach and a bow tie. Oh, and he had a stovepipe hat. and like this really weird long nose. I'm listening to myself describe this thing, and I almost don't believe it myself, like this is some kind of weird fever dream that I had. But no. This was real, and his name was Timer. I didn't even know that until today. And it doesn't make me dislike him any less. And like I said, this Timer thing had several PSAs, starting in the 70s and running through the 80s. Mostly he would tell you to eat healthy, like he sang a song about eating cheese after school, or how to make your own ice pops with an ice cube tray and juice and toothpicks. But this one is called Don't Knock It Till You Try It.
Yuck! Oh, come on! Don't knock it till you try it. Put a little on your plate. Don't make a face before you taste it. Some kids think it's great. Why don't you try a smorgasbord dinner, which means a smidgen of this and a smidgen of that. Don't knock it till you try it. Eating can be fun with little bites of different things instead of lots of one. Don't quibble till you nibble, a dabble or a dibble of everything that's on your plate, and then go back and eat the things you like again.
I cannot be the only one that remembers these. Obviously, I found these clips on YouTube, but please tell me some of you out there remember this awful little mustard stain. So yeah, there are countless public service announcements from the 80s and 90s, and I'm not even sure we've scratched the surface with this batch. Honestly, it gets even more targeted, I think, when you go regionally. Like, these were national public service announcements. I think regionally, we all had our own set of public service announcements that applied more locally to us. So I'm going to be instituting PSA Friday. Check back on Instagram every Friday at Busy Signalcast, and I'm going to be sharing all sorts of weird, wild, and really funny public service announcements from back in the day. I'm going to hashtag it PSA Friday, and I think we all should start digging and finding our old school PSAs. Tag it PSA Friday, tag me as well, and I'll totally share it up on my stories. Let's see who's got what. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some like crazy stuff out there. So how many of these did you remember from this batch? Did I unlock any memories? Do you remember, the weird mustard guy singing about cheese? Do you wish I had mentioned OG Readmore on this one? Or, any other insert public service announcement? Should I do another episode? Or should we just keep it rolling on PSA Friday? Let me know. Hit me up at Busy Signalcast on Insta or busysignalcast@gmail.com. If there's any you want to see featured, let me know. I'm taking all suggestions. This has been a lot of fun. I look forward to continuing it. Guys, I want to say thank you for hanging out and listening. This has just been a blast. Cheers, everybody. I'll see you next time. Once again, I just want to say thanks for listening. And as always, you can listen to The Busy Signal everywhere quality podcasts are streamed. Hit the subscribe button to have a new episode delivered directly to your favorite device every other Friday. And if you really enjoy the show, leave a positive review. I don't know what that does, but would this be a real podcast if I didn't ask for that? You can also head over to Instagram and follow the show at Busy Signalcast for even more retrostalgic content. I share a good amount of stuff that isn't mentioned on the episodes. And while you're there, say hi in the comments. And until next time, remember, reach out and touch the past.